So cultivating healthy community was something that was very important to me because I'd experienced like unhealthy community. So really, a lot of the things that I've created in the programs that I've created, for entrepreneurs, it's because I've seen a problem and I've seen something that I don't like. And I'm like, in the thing that I'm going to create, I want to cultivate healthy community. So that was the first part of it was making sure that, that was in place.
Welcome to the Paid to Create podcast, where we dig into the secret strategies of successful creators making a lucrative living. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
I just have to tell you about Kartra, the marketing platform that has seriously transformed my business. You know how running a business can be insanely time consuming, right? Well, Kartra has been a game changer for me. It's honestly like having an entire marketing team in my pocket. And what I love most is that it automates all the tedious daily tasks for me, from marketing to sales to even customer experience. I can't believe how much time and energy I've saved since I started using it. And get this. With Kartra, I can create websites, funnels, courses, membership sites, email campaigns, calendars, surveys, you name it. It's made managing my business so much simpler and more affordable. Honestly, I can't recommend Kartra enough. If you're curious, head to paidtocreatepodcast.com/Kartra to start your trial. Trust me, you won't regret it.
Hey man, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Good to be here.
Cool, man. How's it being back in San Diego?
Oh, dude, I don't like Florida. It's something about, I don't know, the humidity. Buddha, my dog, just like, he pulls himself back to the house because it's so friggin' hot. I think he's sweating, right? Even though dogs can like deal with that.
Yep.
But the hurricane, man, like that just tipped it over the edge. But great to be back, San Diego. I mean, you're the reason why I'm here. Let's not forget.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's true. We'll go back way back. But yeah, you came back to beautiful, rainy weather, and now we got the Santa Ana wind. So
it's better than Florida, dude. And also better than England, right? We know that story.
Yeah. Everyone in England and Florida who's listening is like, what are you talking about? It's great here.
Some people are surprised I've not been back to England for since I came, like 8-9 years ago. So
yeah, I was just back there for 3 weeks and it rained the whole time. So
right.
It's everyone's so happy in their welly boots and big jackets. So anyway, let's get into why you're here. I brought you on the show because you've had many transitions as an entrepreneur. When I first met you, you were basically selling a book, The Lunchbox Diet, and that transitioned into, paleo stuff and then into fitness business coaching, and you built up a $1 million business there. Mm-hmm. Then you decided to burn it all to the ground, and we'll get into that, and kind of move into the personal development space. You had success there, but then you got into NFTs. And I remember when you first got into it, because I was like talking to you about it, and I'm like, well, how often are you studying this stuff? And you're like, oh, I spend like 6 hours a day. And I was like, I don't have time for this. Like, right. I was like, and that's when I was like, I'm never going to get into this stuff. So what got you into NFTs?
Yeah. So, COVID happened, right? And I'll be honest with you, during that event of COVID, I was wanting fun like a lot of people. I got out a puppet that I did like a puppet thing. And it was like the playful me was just wanting to come out and more creativity. Being in the coaching space for a long time, having done, Lunchbox Diet, yes, but, the paleo stuff, but more so, the fitness business stuff. And I wanted to change. I wasn't like, it was just feeling funky to me, with how everything was on Facebook and just the way that things were being marketed. And I got into crypto, or back into crypto. And then everyone started talking about NFTs, Gary Vaynerchuk, and you just see it. And so, of course, like it piques your curiosity. And so, I bought my first NFT. It was a Back to the Future NFT on a platform called Vivi. And then I started to invest in more. I started to get involved in communities, because one thing that happens is when you buy your first NFT, you don't understand that it's linked to something. You just see that it's art, right? I see the picture. But then you realize that there's this whole other community which is mainly focused on platforms that I wasn't used to. I wasn't a fan of Twitter, and I was a massive Facebook junkie. I would say I was addicted to Facebook. I don't even use Facebook anymore. And so I segued into Twitter. But then there's also this community of like Discord. Like, what's Discord? I didn't know about it. And it's like very, chat-based. And so you start to learn about, this image is now tied to this community. And then I started to be part of communities. I started to understand that there's toxicity in these communities, and there's this whole other environment that honestly I wasn't experiencing in the Facebook place, in this environment of Facebook. Then I started to think about, well, maybe I'd like to do my own project, but nothing was clicking. There, I had these ideas, but it's just kind of like, you know what it's like when you got an idea, but it's just like, it's not flowing. Yep. So I spent a year and a half as an investor in different NFT projects, learning like what's rarity, what's utility, how do you build a community. And then actually through one of those communities, I heard this thing about AI art, and I didn't know anything about it. I just heard about it. I heard that you could go and type in these prompts and start to like produce these images. And I thought it was cool. I was like, oh, that's nice. I appreciate different types of art. And, for me also NFTs like took me back to my childhood where you were collecting things, right? Garbage
can kids or something.
Yes. Garbage patch kids or something like that. And, again, it took me back to the collecting days. And then after I discovered AI, I literally walked past my dog, Buddha, who's a King Charles Cavalier for the dog owners. And by the way, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have a dog, because it was your dogs that actually got like opened my heart to dogs, right? So Buddha is actually a big reason for having Buddha is you. And I walked past Buddha and I was like, Dog Alien. That was it. It was like this random thought. And I put Dog Alien into a program called Mid-Journey, which is one of these AI platforms. And it popped out this really funny image and I laughed and it was just like, oh, this is cool. Then I'd been in a project which was created by a Hollywood director, William Eubank, who his film Underwater was very popular. The Signal, a movie with Russell Crowe, Liam Hemsworth. So I started to generate these connections, and with his project it was very different because a lot of projects have just the art, but with his project he tied in storytelling. And so instead of just investing in this NFT and seeing this art, he was also like building a backstory. So there's little Scremlin characters, and it was like, oh, what is your Scremlin doing today? Oh, its hair got on fire and it had to go to the hospital, right? So it's like I started to realize the power of story. And so then, because I wanted to do a project myself, I was like, I can tie all this together. And a Forbes article came out, and the title was Merging the Worlds of Hollywood Storytelling and Personal Growth, which is my project Doglians. And so what you have is a series of these different dog breeds, which are these aliens with all of these different wild characteristics. Some have got like these goo bodies, and some have got these like aggressive faces. They're called the growlers, and they're a bit more, confident looking, right? And it started to open me up creatively. And so for me, as a coach, as someone that was, and still does executive coaching and works with entrepreneurs, this brought in a whole other element of creativity. And I was like, wow, I can do this really fun thing, which is building this story and doing these NFTs, which is putting me in flow. And I can also link it to it's called IRL, in real life, right? IRL, we're in IRL right now versus being on Twitter. I can tie it to my IRL and Web 2 work as a coach and bring these worlds together. And to me, that was very exciting. So then I went into the journey of learning like how to build a project, getting a developer and tying it all together. And it took time. It took a lot of effort. But what I can say from doing it is that it opened up a whole new world to me. It also got me out of doing the things that I didn't want to do, which a lot of people are doing now and they're happy with it. But for me, I just wasn't liking what I was seeing on like Instagram and Facebook of how people were like marketing in that way. And I wanted to do something different. I saw this as an opportunity. We launched Doglians in October 2022. And it was received very well. We had early challenges with minting the project. Minting is the transfer from
the launch.
Yeah, the launch, right? It's the mint, right? The mint launch. So we launched in October. Very quickly, we had a lot of whales coming in, big investors, shift up some of the language, big investors that came in that saw what I was doing. In fact, on day one, we had a Hollywood producer say that we really like the what you're doing. There's a great possibility of this being on screen. So that gave me a lot of confidence, But the big investors, what they were saying was like, I really love what you're doing in terms of the the coaching, right?
Yeah.
So what we do each week with Doglians is, yes, there's an NFT. So you buy the NFT, like maybe right now it's $100, maybe it's $1,000. I have no idea based on when the podcast comes out, but you get
or the fluctuation of ETH.
Right, exactly, right. So it's going, it's always going up and down like a freaking yo-yo. But you get your NFT, and what happens is then you go into Discord, and then you validate it, right? You get the approval that you have it, and then it basically unlocks like a membership.
Yeah.
It unlocks access to storytelling workshops where we've had an actor from The Hobbit come in and do workshops. Then it opens up coaching from me in a group session. So I'm used to doing that in a Facebook group, but now I'm doing it actually in a metaverse because we create a metaverse environment from it. So there's a lot. It's very involved.
Yeah, what's really interesting is that when you got into NFTs, like my thought process on what an NFT was it was essentially like rich art, right? Where rich people who needed to store money in an asset that couldn't be taxed, that's what they would do. And so I saw it as like for an artist, who was a well-known or like, successful, they could create digital art and, a rich person would buy it because they're essentially storing money. And then what you would essentially do is like in the metaverse, you would have your home or whatever it is, and it would just be bragging rights. Like when someone comes over, it's like, oh, look at my, in the metaverse, like look at my fancy art that I've purchased, and of course there'd be knockoffs, but like only one person has the original Picasso, right? And those kind of things. And that's how I saw it. And it wasn't until Gary V's project with V Friends that I saw he tied his NFTs to ticket, 3 years worth of tickets to his event. And I was like, oh, that's really, really smart. And then like, cause I didn't like similar, like, we had very little conversation on what the world of NFTs looked like, right? And a part of it in my head, I was like, at some point I'll just like, download what you have from you. I'll just get you to spill the beans. And if it's worthy, I'll jump in. But I saw you spending money. I saw you doing stuff. I saw you with the puppetpreneurs. You were going to have an NFT project and then you like shut it all down. And so like for that year and a half, I was like, what's going on? It wasn't until you started talking about the storytelling piece and the community that I started to get intrigued. And the reason I got intrigued is having a 2 and 4-year-old, what I've noticed is that cartoons are nowadays designed to sell product, right? So every cartoon, we're very careful about screen time and how and what the kids watch, because what we've realized, and being in the marketing and advertising world myself, and you the same, you notice these things way more than the regular Joe, right? Because you're looking for that like everything you touch and watch could be inspiration for an idea or a project. So I'm watching these cartoons and I'm going, this is designed so that whenever a kid walks in a department store and they see their favorite logo, that they want the product. They don't even know what the product is. So, when we get ice cream, what ice cream do the kids want? Well, the one that's tied to one of their favorite cartoons, right? And you start realizing that like, oh, this is like a path to something bigger. And that's what I did with NFTs. And, like I jumped in on your project, which is, I've only invested in one other project, which is the Scremlins you mentioned earlier. But the reason is because I saw the potential of what was bigger, right? The NFT was like a trading card. And I used to collect basketball cards when I was a kid. And then there was these things called Pogs that we collected and things like that. But the collecting piece was more, there was a bigger community. Like I used to go to these trading events and there would be, people that had boxes of cards and you'd go through looking for the rare ones or looking for the ones you wanted. With the Pogs, you'd get together and you would play each other to win them. So the fact that there was something more, and it was really just like the ticket in, and that's kind of how I saw it. And so with Doglians, number one, the artwork is phenomenal. Even, you using AI to create artwork is not that easy. Even if you preload it, like I was playing with the other day and I put like 30 pictures of myself in, and I still got pictures back with 3 arms and missing teeth. And I'm like, how is this possible? Like I'm training this with my own pictures and I'm still getting like, and I'm like, is that what I really look like? Am I like, but the point I'm trying to make is like, you really found a passion there and grew that, but the community piece was super, super interesting. So let's talk a little bit about that year and a half, that discovery phase. Like you almost launched, you didn't. Like anything, NFTs is a legit, business model. And I've come to realize that it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere, because it isn't, the artwork is a piece of it, but it's a piece of a bigger picture. So what were some of those lessons in that first year and a half you learned that made Doglians such a success when you did launch it?
I think a big one was like leadership of the community, because, when you're on Facebook, yes, there's some funky posts from people, whatever, but like there's no kind of like toxicity. No, I just didn't feel that anyway, personally, from what I created. But in being in some of these communities, like the Web3 space in many ways is kind of going through a level of maturity. I think that we as in business, we understand that cycle. So cultivating healthy community was something that was very important to me, because I'd experienced like unhealthy community. So really, a lot of the things that I've created in the programs that I've created, for entrepreneurs, it's because I've seen a problem and I've seen something that I don't like. And I'm like, in the thing that I'm going to create, I want to cultivate healthy community. So that was the first part of it, was making sure that, that was in place. The next part was the utility part, because what happens is a lot of these projects come out, and granted, right, you have projects from artists, and for a lot of people, they're collecting art, but you have in the space, in the NFT space, this thing called rug pulls. And these rug pulls are when people put out a project, there's no intention to do anything with it, and it's just a cash grab. And so there's a lot of manipulation in the space. A lot of people don't come in because, it's seen as scammy or whatever, right? So for me, what I wanted to do was make sure that I added a lot of value. And projects struggle to do that because, they just put together this art, but then there's nothing else there to keep the community interested. So for me, as a coach, the first thing that made sense was to tie what I do to the NFT, which I think actually a lot of people can do. Like, for listeners, right? They've got an existing business, they've got a consulting business or a coaching business or whatever that business is. There's a way that you can tie what you do to the NFT. So that was the first thing that I did. The second thing that I did was also looking outside of my skill set to add other utility. So for example, the connections that I was making in Hollywood and making, phone calls and having conversations. The great thing about the NFT space is that the community wants to help, right? They want to get involved. And so I started to, have conversations so that I could bring in other utility, right? Bring in other experts. And of course, this is bringing in my Web2 skill set, right? Putting together a course and bringing in experts, right? I mean, it's what's happening here on a podcast, right? So that was another lesson, which was, learning what the frustrations were within the community and doing exactly the opposite, right? Under promising and over delivering, seeing and being in projects myself where I was told that something was happening, but it didn't arrive, making sure that I delivered on it's called a roadmap, right? Yeah. Delivering on my roadmap and making sure that the community got constant value from me coming from multiple directions. I'll give you another example of this recently. So one thing in Discord, which is this platform to like the community to chat, I was doing VC chats, which is voice chats to the holders, right? So there's gated access. So you connect the NFT and then the holders get access to me, which is important because if they're in communication with the founder, they feel safe. And safety in the NFT space is very important. So with metaverse being this thing that I'd heard about but not experienced, I'll tell you something interesting that happened. When Doglians came out and the art came out and people were saying that they were loving it, and by the way, that's one of the big fears because in an NFT launch, you have what's called the reveal. And then what happens is all the art gets revealed. And so there's this fear of like, are people going to like it? It was very well received. But what started to happen afterwards was that people wanted to commission me for my AI art. Now, I'll be transparent. I can't even draw a stick man well. But for me, with so many creative ideas in my head, being able to produce the AI art and then master that over a period of months and months and months, of which I still do to today, it became attractive for collectors to get one-to-one, one-of-one art from me, which is a custom piece. Then I wanted to create a better experience. So instead of having these Discord VC chats, because someone commissioned to me to do some one-of-one art, I actually went into a metaverse. It's called Spatial, and I put that art on the wall for him to see instead of sending it to him on Discord. Then that opened up my eyes in terms of like I could create an environment in the metaverse to actually coach. And so then I used Upwork to find a builder to create a metaverse for a coffee shop called Ralph's. Now, how did that come about? The community, which is not something that I did in my previous businesses, the community was building the story and the locations. So we had a VC chat, and I asked the community, what should we call it? And someone came up with Ralph's, because Ralph is one of the main characters. So then I took that idea and I decided to build a coffee shop called Ralph's, of which now I just came down from my home, having done a workshop to holders on storytelling in the metaverse. So to me, that's really interesting because that's where things are going. Something really interesting actually happened this week, which was when it comes to Twitter, we have Twitter spaces, right? So people have to request to be on stage to speak. That's a big fear for a lot of people. And I'm a big advocate of the mental health side. What was super interesting was that when this person, they're not a holder of Doglians, but they're someone that came into a metaverse chat, they said that by being in the metaverse, it removed this barrier of fear and they felt more safe just having like a coffee chat because of the environment of the metaverse. That was super interesting to me, that I could create a digital environment and make it an environment where someone could feel safe to speak, but they didn't feel the pressure of, say, putting their hand up and requesting to be on a Twitter space. That blew my mind. And then another thing happened yesterday, which was part of Doglians, is we have a writer's room, which is the holders put together ideas of how the story will go. And then I have a podcast called Doglians, which is basically the lore and the story of it unfolding. And one of the holders posted, and they won a growler for their entry, which is one of our rare Doglians. And he said that really helped to build his confidence. That's the reason why I'm in Web3. That's the reason why I'm in NFTs. I'm here to change. Like, it's great, the financial side. We reached 100 ETH in secondary sales. It's all cool. The financial, there's a financial opportunity for builders, right? Which is I feel if you've got integrity, if you've got a great business, there's a way to actually generate something. But the flip of that also is this, right? It's different ways to create change. When Meta first came out and Mark Zuckerberg talked about the metaverse, I was like, this is gonna create a lot of disconnection. We're gonna see a lot of people like it's gonna be destructive. Looking at it from a mental health and emotional intelligence perspective, right? But then I started to think about the opposite, which is, what if someone feels safer to actually go and have an avatar and put it into the metaverse? And that could be an avenue for them to actually transform. The reality, like you said, AJ, the reality is it's here. It's what we do with it that's important.
Yeah, you mentioned some interesting things there. I think the idea of the metaverse, a lot of people say, oh, like I'm not going to live in this virtual world. But what they don't understand is that it shifts experiences. And where I think the metaverse is going to be huge is for like live events, right? You're always going to get people who want to travel and go to something live and be around other people. And then you're going to get the people who, one, can't afford it because they can't afford a plane ticket, they can't afford a hotel. And a lot of people, like, to afford it in the past would put stuff on credit cards. Well, now they're maxed out on credit cards. So like there's a lot of people who like are restricted from that sense. Then there's the people who don't want to travel, right? Because maybe they have a family and they value the time they spend. And so they want to see their kids go to bed every night. And so they don't want to be gone for 4 or 5 days. There's those types of people. But what the metaverse does, in essence, and I'll use, like, I'm a big UFC fan, like to go to a UFC fight is very different than watching it on TV. The atmosphere adds to it. And I would argue any live entertainment, there's something being live versus just listening to it. But now you can change that experience and be there live, right? Through the metaverse. Because if you've ever put on virtual reality, like the brain really does struggle to see. I know you've all seen those videos where like someone's getting attacked by something and they like fall over, or they're swinging and they like punch the TV or something, right? Because the mind isn't able to separate that. And even just doing like at Legoland, we take the kids and they have, it's a 4D ride or whatever, but like you feel like you're on the roller coaster. and you're not. You're just sitting in a seat and the seat's moving, but like there's moments that you like freak out because like it feels like you're about to fall off the ride, and it's designed that way. But like it's interesting, even though I've been on the ride several times with the kids, I still will flinch, because again, the mind is easily convinced. So when you create these scenarios that change and shift the experience, it opens up new possibilities for individuals. And I think that that's something that anyone listening, maybe they're going, oh, I'm not interested in NFTs or Web 3.0 or whatever, which I would say you probably should have some interest. But from a business standpoint, what I love hearing is you mentioned you zigged when everyone zagged, right? Like that's how you created uniqueness. You brought in things that worked in your previous businesses into this one, added new things. But really the focus is around the community. And I've seen in the community things that weren't received well and how you responded. And if we look at the debacle that happened over Christmas with like Southwest, like
I was personally impacted by that. So
the CEO and the company, like as fast as they could, got involved. And that's the world we live in now, where CEOs don't get to hide behind, glass boxes and nobody know who they are. Like they're expected to be on the front lines. And, one of our mentors and people we look up to being both from England is Richard Branson. And that's something he talks about. Like when disaster happens, he's always the first there with the companies because he realized a long time ago that, right? And I think that that's really, really key. What are some things like now the project's launched, right? And you have this community. What are some of the struggles that you have building, continuing to build this? Like, whether it's getting new holders or whether it's managing the community, what are some challenges you've been facing?
I would say, like, I'm big into personal development, and actually the project's about that, but managing my own kind of burnout, I think, because I'm on a lot of Twitter spaces and I'm, engaging a lot with the community, that's one thing I've got to constantly check in, which I think is very important for a lot of people to do. Like you say, I mean, an NFT project is about bringing in new holders, right? So that's about, being on spaces and letting other people know, like, thinking about different ways to collaborate. There's, the NFT space, a lot of people, they're in it for different reasons, but a lot of people are in it for the money. So it's keeping people engaged, is a struggle, but it's also a challenge, we talked about the metaverse and you talked about experiences, have you tried yet the Oculus or MetaQuest? Have you tried that yet?
No, the only VR headset was like this, Samsung sent it to Jenny. My wife is Samsung, I'm Apple, but they sent her like a cardboard box one that you just put the phone in and then put it on.
Right, yeah.
And I tried that, and even that was like freakily real. So I've not tried one of the Oculuses.
So one of the things that I did was I bought a MetaQuest 2 because the coffee shop is in VR as well through Spatial. And so like I'm experiencing new challenges with the metaverse, like people coming in today, jumping on the tables and not, like, it's just like, like managing this new thing. But that's also not a reason not to do it, because it's such a learning curve, right? A lot of people, they've not been into a metaverse before, right? And so those are the challenges which I'm experiencing, which is like drawing people in, and so you have to do like giveaways and lots of different things to test. But then if you do a giveaway, the challenge with that is someone going to win it and then put it straight up for sale because they want the liquidity from what you've given them? So it's like giving, if you're going to do a giveaway, giving it to the right types of communities, which I think is a big marketing lesson in itself, right? So I did a collaboration and someone said, hey, I want to give away 20 NFTs. And I said, hey, you want to make sure that you give those NFTs to the right 20 people, because if you give them to the wrong 20 people, they're just instantly going to get dumped for liquidity. But if you give them to the right people that are interested in storytelling, they're going to hold those NFTs. They're going to build a character around them. They're going to buy more, of which they did. And so the choices that we make are very important. Now, if you have a project which doesn't have the utility like I do, then you're more likely to have those kind of issues go on. So it is, the challenges of an NFT and Web3 business are radically different from a Web2 business.
Yeah.
But it's also, despite all of that, despite the challenges, and also, let's be honest, you've also got everything publicly on the blockchain, right? So there's transparency around what's happening. People see that as a pro, and people see that as a con. But I'll give everyone a warning, right? If you go from a Web 2 business into a Web 3 business, like, you're going to have different people calling you out for different things because you just don't have that in Web 2. So if you're also going from Web 2 into Web 3, there's also an opportunity to also educate, because a lot of the projects that I'm in, and I've invested a decent amount, I'm in those because of the founder, and I know that they understand business. I just got into a new project, and I was listening to the founder talk yesterday about their decisions around IP and making the brand kid friendly, and there are this is what I'll say is an opportunity. There are so many eyes on Web3 right now of intellectual property, i.e. big companies that are looking at creativity of different projects to then invest in them, to partner with them. And you see the link ups happening. Mm-hmm. You see some great ones happening in Web3. You also see some terrible ones because the companies, they don't have the right advisors coming in, understanding how the community in Web3 works. It's a very tight community. You look at CrossFit, right? People think that that's small, but it's big when you go into it. Mm. Like when you're in there, you see the depth and width of it. It's the same in Web3. When you go in, yes, to a lot of people, it's a small, but when you're in it, there's so much happening, right? It's wild. I would say it's wild. It's wild. It's creative. It's fun, and there's great opportunity. But I did a talk and I did a workshop for a group who's interested in AI, and a lot of the resistance around NFTs and Web3. There was two. One was it's a scam, right? Which is, I think it's what we see happening, right? And then of course there are security measures that need to be dealt with in the Web3 space and NFTs. But the other one, which I think is worth bringing up, was the understanding of utility. Mm. And when someone understands this link, this missing link between the token, which is the NFT, and the utility of a skill set, and those two things being linked, I think that's when people start to get it.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is, like anything, client selection is like a very important thing, right? And it depends on how sustainable you want something to be. So if you're selling something and you just want someone to buy it once and then never buy from you again, that's kind of like the projects where people like burn, right? Like they make some money and then they disappear, and maybe they do it again and they'll do it until they get shut down.
They're short-sighted, right?
Right. Yeah. And then there's the projects that have long-term vision, right? And those are the ones that seem to be playing momentum. What's interesting when I've, observed what you're doing, and you mentioned this to me, and I'd love for you to go deeper because you mentioned community, and obviously you've had mentors during this journey, but you mentioned something that's like you've been on phone calls and in chats and things like that very, very differently than when you were in, essentially the digital course industry, the expert industry, right? What I mean by that is that access to certain people or like your connections that you've made are considerably different.
Right.
Like, what is different about the space that has so far, like maybe it's because it's new, like, and he's yet to be completely corrupt by, money. But there seems to be this willingness to share and willingness to, if someone's interested, to include them like I've never seen before.
If I'm honest, I think, and this could be just my mindset of it, but I think it might be true for a lot of people, which is in the coaching space in Web 2, you kind of get a sense that if I get on a call with someone, they're just going to want to sell me something, right? And so there's this guard, there's this kind of like, there's that kind of aspect to it. In Web 3, it's very different. There's a different energy to it. It's very difficult to explain, like it just feels, some of the Web 2 stuff that I've experienced just started feeling a bit icky to me. Just seeing the same things all the time. And also, I think the word's alignment, right? Over time, I think if we grow and we start to experience new things, we start to, we start to move away from the things that feel a little bit heavy to us. And so for me, Web3 and NFTs, it felt fresh, it felt creative, it kind of just opened a door. And I actually have a course, and I talk about this quantum zone where we bring two things together and create something new, right? The puppet thing, which is this puppetpreneurs, I was going to do an NFT for that, but I didn't have the experience of the community and understanding traits and how you have to understand things like traits. Like, what are traits? Why does the community value that? Because in NFTs, there's a thing called rarity. And so people look at that. I know that you look at that, right? And so it just felt right to me. And so I started to get into conversations, these VC calls, these voice chats. And why is that the case? Because a lot of people are anonymous in the NFT space, right? They don't share themselves. It's very normal for us to have a Zoom, right? Or be in person. But in the NFT space, it's a little bit different. So VCs are something that you do. But when I started to have these conversations, I don't know, it just felt like a different home for me. It felt special. And I think a lot of people, despite some of the quote unquote negatives of the NFT space, Web3 space, which I think will change over time with mass adoption, I just think it's a very great community to be part of.
Yeah. What would you say, because obviously a lot of people listening probably, they're not going to pivot their business completely, right? Like they have a certain business, they've had it for a while, that continues to grow. But what are some of the things that you think would be valuable for a Web 2 business to learn from the Web3 world?
First things first, I think you've got to buy your first NFT. If you go to Doglians.com, I actually built this in Kartra, right? The site, and also, the opt-in page, etc. I think you got to buy your first NFT, and you do that to notice how you feel, right? You also do it through a different lens. You do it through the lens of how am I feeling with this experience? Go into a community, see how it feels. And as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you'll start to get ideas. When I got the VR headset, I got that because obviously Ralph's coffee shop was in VR, but when I put it on and I was experiencing it, it opened up so many ideas of I could do this, I could do this, and I could do this. I think the other opportunity too, which I think is huge, I think it's massive for people listening, which is internet marketing and email marketing is not adopted in the Web3 space right now. The opt-in rates are I think I was getting opt-in rates for Doglians of 80, 90%.
Incredible.
Right? Because it's, you look at a project, and so a project is going to have what? They're going to have an OpenSea for buying an NFT, right? So if you go to OpenSea.io and look up Doglians, you'll see the Doglians there, right? Then you're going to have a Discord community, and then you're going to have a website. 99% of the websites do not have email opt-in whatsoever. There's a massive opportunity there for marketers, right? You also talked about people coming in and destroying it, right? So I think doing that in a conscious way is going to be important. But I think it's a great opportunity for high integrity marketers to come in and do good and help projects to succeed that are also doing good. Two people doing good together, versus people who are just out to get a quick buck, make money, rip people off. Just like you've got marketers that are shady, you've also got great marketers who are doing it in a really cool way, an innovative way. So I think there's opportunities in many different ways. Now, segue into you, I also know for you, you're really getting into things like AI. I also think things like ChatGPT, right, and Midjourney. I know that from speaking to other experts that Facebook ad click-through rates are massive with AI art. I think that also ChatGPT is great for accelerating marketing ideas. I don't think that necessarily you should put something into ChatGPT and then put a whole book out and make it out as your own, having produced it from ChatGPT. But I think if you're struggling in your mind to come up with 3 ideas for a podcast, you could get a prompt to help you to accelerate learning and education. One thing with Doglians is that, it's the sci-fi and fantasy space of which I enjoy, but there's certain things that I need to know about that space that I need to learn. But I asked the AI, and I also tied it, for example, our second collection, the headache collection, which is the bad guy. I'm also linking that utility to teaching entrepreneurs and business owners and founders how to use AI to launch a project or to use that in their businesses. So I think the opportunity, I see it like this. When you go to a Tony Robbins event, and we've been to Date with Destiny, right? Tony is great at opening the door to go deeper into these other things, right? So it's like he introduces you to new modalities. I think the benefit of getting into NFTs is a new world being opened of like, if it wasn't for NFTs, I wouldn't have got into AI.
Yep.
If it wasn't for AI, I wouldn't have learned about music AI, where you can type in a prompt and come up with a music track. That then you're going to start to use that in your business, right? You're going to start to make your business more optimized, more creative, and that's going to bring in new clientele. I also think that it's just, if you're not getting into NFTs, you're also going to most likely regret it. I would say in a year's time, but definitely in 2 years' time, because you see Gary Vaynerchuk, he has a restaurant that's linked to an NFT whereby it's a membership to a high-end sushi restaurant, for example, right? You got so many things. A house was recently bought linked with an NFT,
Yeah, it's interesting because like when I look at it, I think you're right. Like experiencing something, for me, like I love to go experience things, and I'm one side of my brain is experiencing it in the moment. The other side of my brain is looking at it. What is happening? How is this affecting me? What feelings am I getting? How can this transcend into different businesses? So I think like getting involved is key, because you're right. Like I've seen things I wouldn't have seen having just asked you, right? Like just from the outside. So being involved in the community and seeing the way the Discord channel works and seeing how that then links to Twitter, and like you start to understand things and how people operate and what they want differently, and you get ideas and you get thought processes, and that's the same with AI for me. Like as I'm watching AI and they're looking at all the companies that are coming out as businesses, and then looking at how do you take certain things and put it into your day-to-day life for higher productivity. Because I'm all about optimization, all about improvement. Like I'm always looking at, okay, how do we like collapse time and get the same outcome? So essentially, how can I do less and get more always, right? And so when I look at that, the one thing I realized with all of it is creativity is what the key here. And you mentioned prompts earlier. Prompts, for those that don't know, are the inputs that you put in, the questions that you ask. And reality is that if you're not a critical thinker, you're not creative, you don't know how to go deeper with the questions, you get back a certain answer. But can you then go deeper? And it's the same when you're in sales. When you're sitting across from someone and you're trying to sell them something, the salespeople who do best are the people who can go deeper, right? Someone gives a surface answer and they say, well, that's not the real answer. Like, why don't you explain that a little bit to me? What do you mean when you say that? You have to be able to do the same thing with these, with the prompts, right? And the businesses that are spurring up are the businesses or the business owners who have gone, okay, like we know how to create a formula, a series of prompts to create an outcome. And you're going to pay us to do that. And so you can be on the consumer side, or you can be on the creative side. The creative side is always going to bring the most money. This is the side you want to be on. And you want to be able to say, how do we do that within our business? Now, it might be in your business, you use certain things that you pay for, but then that creates an outcome for you that creates revenue, right? So you have to be able to look at it like that. With that in mind, where do you see things going in the next, I used to say 5 to 10 years, but it seems like everything happens within 12 months. But where do you see the future of NFTs, Web 3, and kind of the coaching, consulting, expert, course creator world? Because, most of the people listening to this are probably somewhat in that world.
First of all, I see the space evolving over the next year with better technology to make things safer, which I think is important to bring more people in. Due to the amount of scams that happen and other things of such. Obviously, I think it's also linked to the price of Ethereum and Bitcoin and the crypto world as a whole. But I think the more people that are coaches, consultants, for example, the more people that are using their skill set, I think that the more. I mean, it works like this, right? You see a testimonial and then you get interested. I think that. I've seen on Facebook, I mean, I've not been on Facebook, but I've seen over the past couple of months, a massive amount of shift to talk about AI, right? I think that once those worlds start to merge more, like I'm bringing in, NFTs and then using AI, right? So I'm merging these things. I think that one links to the other, right? So AI will link to NFTs and NFTs will link to AI. I think there's going to be a critical point where there's going to be a massive surge, right? Then how do you get an edge, right? You have to stay on top of it. There's a new version of Midjourney that's just come out that makes the art so much better and it's so much more intelligent. The AI is getting more, it's ridiculous how intelligent that AI is. So I think it's about, maximizing the new technology that's coming out and staying ahead. It's moving at such a rapid pace. It's absolutely scary, but I have a question for you, because what I sensed from you was an acceleration, right? Like you were like, yeah, I'm not really interested in NFTs, but then you got a Doglian, and then you were like, I'm curious to know that point where you started to become a collector and you wanted to get more. Like, what was the mindset shift? Was it a connection to the character? Was it the story? Like, what turned you from someone that was like on the edge, and then you got your first one, to being like, oh my God, I love this and I want more? Like there was something that happened. Because I think that the reason why I'm asking that is that needs to happen, of what happened to you, to more people, but you had to go through steps to get there.
Yeah, it goes back to suddenly seeing the potential beyond the art.
Right.
So because I love art, right? I'm a big collector with art, and was an artist when I was a kid. And so that piece is, cool. But honestly, when I saw like the Bored Apes and I saw like the CryptoPunks, I'm like, man, it's like okay art, right? So it was like, I like it, but like there's 2,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 of these things. Like they're not unique. Like who cares? But what I realized is that when I realized there was a community and there was something behind most of the art that was successful driving it, right? Whether that was a membership or a ticket to an event or whatever, I started to understand that, wait a minute, as a business owner of an NFT, like you're in the business of keeping your members, right? Because yes, you make money when they flip something, but if you just have a bunch of flippers, your floor price, which is, what you can purchase an NFT for, the cheapest in that collection, is significantly lower, like 10, 20 bucks, If you want 1,000, 10,000, 20,000, I don't know what Bored Ape is now, but at one point it was like $250,000 to buy one, right? Like you have to have people who hold, because the rarity goes up of the availability, right? In order to have a group of people that hold on to something, there has to be extreme value there. Right. And we're shifting, in my mind, the entire online industry is shifting to results-based marketing, right? Meaning people are not going to purchase things unless they know that there's actual a result on the other side. And they're going to know that by the people that they're, research purchases and needing to see like, testimonials, case studies, actual evidence that this thing works is as education, as people become more educated on everything, their decision-making process is slowing down. Their attention span is getting less, but the impulse is getting longer, because they're learning that because at first when this happened, they're purchasing impulse buys all the time, and then they realize that this isn't serving them, right? And so people are, due to, I would say, a reduction in funds, people are much more careful with their money now, right? Mm-hmm. Even the rich, because they see there's a potential crash in the economy. So how do we prepare for that? Well, we have to pull back on our spending now so that we have cash for when everything collapses, we can invest, right? So there's different thought processes there. But it was the flip was literally seeing like, like the world, in my opinion, the world we're heading to is going to be based around customers for life, right? And this NFT world, Doglians especially, because obviously not all NFT projects are created equal. Being a marketer, being into storytelling, like I resonate with it right away. The artwork we know we both love dogs. And it was just cool. It was like cool artwork. But then realizing like, oh, I could see this as a movie. Oh, I could see this as a cartoon series on TV. Right. Oh, I could see these as plushies.
Right.
Like it suddenly, and then seeing, okay, being involved in experiencing, how do we actually contain a community and work with them to grow this thing, right? So they become a part of the product. And, I know a lot of people in the NFT world would probably cringe at the things that I'm saying because they don't want it to seem like it's a business. But the reality is business, right? Like you don't have a unique snowflake. It's all the same. Like you were mentioning earlier, like you still drive email lists because it's a key component of business, right? It's not, you don't just have it, and you have huge opt-in numbers because in that world, it's not normal. So when people see it, they give you their email because they're not used to getting spammed by 7,000 NFT projects. The curiosity in me is just, how do we apply this beyond to all business, right? How do we create this involvement of the community? How do we get it where we have holders, like members that don't want to leave? Because the way I look at it, and I'll use a mastermind because you and I have spitballed on how would you use an NFT for a mastermind. Well, if you have a $50,000 mastermind and I sell you an NFT, right? So your membership is that NFT. I can charge annual dues, no problem. I can do it separately from the NFT. But if you have that and then there's only 100 of them or 150, now I'm responsible for making you stay. And if you want to leave and you can sell that and you can sell it whatever you want, now you can determine the value of the mastermind, because that first purchase you have, you get 1 year free with the purchase of the NFT or whatever. Like, am I gonna, if I've got a year out of it and I'm done, what am I going to flip that for?
Right.
And if I flip it for 10, well, now my mastermind's just dropped to $10,000 because the supply and demand is what drives price. And so if you can operate from that, and as a business owner, almost be forced into thinking like that, like you're going to have a much better product and business long-term because you're now thinking of everything of not how do I get another sale, but how do I get a sale and keep that person as a customer forever?
Right.
Right. And have them be a participant in the growth of this business. Right. And I think that's the difference in the past. Even companies that have amazing customer experience, they've never included their customers in the growth of the company.
Right.
And we're shifting to that in a lot of areas. We're doing it at Kartra and Webinar Jam and Ever Webinar. We're doing so much more with the community than we've ever done before. But that comes from a place of like, the reality is that like, they're the reason we get to eat. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it's a lot easier to keep somebody than it is to go to replace them. And so that for me was the shift is I could see how these worlds were colliding, and I realized there's a ton of lessons here because it is a new marketplace, right? It's green. So a lot of things that you might pull over, let's say from the internet marketing world, are going to get rejected quickly because this community already has a set of standards. Right. They already have a level. And I've seen that with shitty projects that have gone and dumped and basically disappeared. The community is now on high alert for that.
Oh, they are. The guard's up for sure. The other thing too, which is we're talking about adoption, which is there's something called POAP, which is proof of attendance. So I think you'll start to see like in more Web2 events where people go and there'll be a QR code on the screen, for example, whereby then they'll get an NFT, right? So there'll be like new entry points happening. The other thing too, which I think is worth mentioning, which is while I have utility of coaching, etc., the usage right now of that can be kind of low. And so I truly believe that the Web3, Web2, the differences between the communities is like usage of utility, right? And how that plays into where we're going in the future. But you make some very important points, definitely around, people's, perception of things and where, exciting opportunities, for a lot of different businesses.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things you mentioned earlier that in reality is that if you get into the world a little bit, you'll start to see how you could use that to your advantage. It's not, for a lot of people, this isn't going to be a pivot. This is going to be adding an additional element. And you go back to collector cards and why people collect things. It means something to them. That's it. The value of something is based on what it means to somebody. And we've seen that with like collectible toys, because the toy companies got smart and they just started making the old toys again. But they make them slightly different because health standards are probably different in terms of code of what you can make for a child now, right? Well, if it's different, there's still people who go pay a lot for the original. Right. And I think that that's kind of key when you start looking at your business. You start to think of it as a subscription business, as a reoccurring revenue business, even if it was annually. Right. Like it changes it because you have to earn that sale. So when you make the first sale, like you have to realize your marketing never stops. And customer experience, the customer journey doesn't stop at the conversion. That's like the beginning. And I look at it like martial arts, right? Like they say when you get black belt, that's the beginning of your journey. Like you've just earned the right to now learn how to be a martial artist. And I think that that's kind of business owners need to understand. When they get a customer, they've now earned the right to be in business and they have to figure that out. So, I know we're tight on time here. Is there anything we haven't covered that you wanted to get into today?
Actually, you just touched on something briefly, which is like one of the things that I brought from Web 2 into Web 3 that I learned was gamification. I think that a lot of people in Web 3 are gamers, but you can also utilize, I did that in my company helping fitness business owners, which was like tiers, right? Levels, right? So with NFTs, depending on how many someone holds, you can hold one. I don't know how many Doglians you have, right? But you have multiple, right? So when it comes to membership, and I don't know whether Kartra are going to do token gated access or something what you guys are planning on in the future, but if anyone's thinking about doing an NFT project, it's also worth learning the gamification side for keeping people engaged and also understanding how people collect. Because when someone buys your NFT, most likely what's going to happen is that they're going to want more, because it's just by the nature they like it. And then if you design the project well, right, they're going to want to be up, because status is very important to people. Now, maybe someone doesn't have the ability to buy a Bored Ape, because for a lot of people, it's a status symbol, right? That's why people have it as a profile picture. But when people go into a project, like if you launch a project, people want to rank up to the highest level because it's a level of status. So you also have to cater that. So I think the topic of gamification within project is also an important one.
Yeah, that's a great point. And actually, that was something I was thinking earlier, but I lost that train of thought. Was I know with your mindset course, that you did, you had a lot of gamification built in for completion, so the people would actually
by performance, yeah.
So people would actually go through and consume, because what you found was, a lot of people purchase, but 80% never even open it. Out of the 20% that do, only 5% ever complete it. And you were like, I'm not going to have that. If the whole course is supposed to be about, transformation, like we're going to make sure they go through it. And you had a lot of things set up.
And I still have that. I still have that training, Suit by Performance. But yeah, I mean, I designed that. Again, I mentioned it at the start, my frustration was with low completion. And so I literally had a thought of, what if I could kick someone out without a refund? And I was just like, that would be kind of ballsy. And so I did it. And the fear turned into people saying, I really needed that, And so my clients have to fill out a form every single day. And if they don't fill it in, you get a strike. And then if there's 3 strikes, or actually 4, the program's locked down and there's no coming back in, and they sign a contract to that. But what I'm doing is I'm raising the bar on standard and transformation. I'm saying I'm here as the coach because I want to help you. Are you willing to do the work? But a lot of people say yes, but they don't do it. You have, as a coach, one of the things you learn is that you have to build in consequences. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs are afraid of implementing that consequence because they're afraid of the client reaction, when actually it can be the flip opposite. And that's what happened when I did Suit by Performance. In fact, one of my most popular articles for entrepreneur.com, I think it's in their top 20 articles of all time, or 25. It's called The Navy SEALs of Personal Growth. And it talks about the neuroscience of behavior and understanding how to get people results. And I think, especially for a lot of maybe people listening who have courses and trainings, what's worse than someone investing in that and then not getting the change that you as the expert and the person that wants to create an impact, they just don't do it. It's hugely frustrating. It's not frustrating to those that just want to make the money, but as someone that is here to install change in someone else so that they can have a better life, sometimes you got to make a power move. So I would say that, those gamification strategies are very important, but also NFTs is a power move too. Yeah. So
yeah, we could keep talking about this, but I know you got a tight deadline and got to go. So where can people find more about your project, you, and follow along if they're interested in?
The Kartra design site at Doglians.com, where there's also a button to click if you're a beginner, so you can learn. I've put together a mini course about how to buy your first NFT. Made it very simple, a small series of videos. You can also check out the podcast to get up to speed with the story. And then obviously OpenSea, right? Once you got your ETH, head to OpenSea, go and find a Doglian that you love. What's your favorite breed?
Pitbulls.
No, but in Doglians.
Oh.
Smilers, right?
Yeah, well, Smilers, yeah. They're little cheeky. They remind me of the Gremlins, so.
There you go. All right, so maybe it'll be a Smiler, and maybe AJ get frustrated if you buy one of those. Yeah.
Cool. Well, let us know when you get your first NFT. We'll have Simon back on the show soon. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you guys on the next episode.
Take care.
I just have to tell you about Kartra, the marketing platform that has seriously transformed my business. You know how running a business can be insanely time consuming, right? Well, Kartra has been a game changer for me. It's honestly like having an entire marketing team in my pocket. And what I love most is that it automates all the tedious daily tasks for me, from marketing to sales to even customer experience. I can't believe how much time and energy I've saved since I started using it. And get this. With Kartra, I can create websites, funnels, courses, membership sites, email campaigns, calendars, surveys, you name it. It's made managing my business so much simpler and more affordable. Honestly, I can't recommend Kartra enough. If you're curious, head to paidcreatepodcast.com/Kartra to start your trial. Trust me, you won't regret it.